right, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Parthivi Das, the Executive Director of C2HR, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our first HR Learning Series for 2024, focused on HR predictions and priorities. I invite you to explore the full collection of our on-demand HR Learning Series available at c2hr.org. We would like today's program to be interactive and invite you to post questions in the Q&A box throughout the discussion. SHRM has approved this learning series for 1 CE credit, and the credit code will be emailed to all of you after the event. Today's featured speakers serve on C2HR's Board of Directors and are HR leaders within their organizations. Join me in welcoming Kia Painter, Ravina Valentine, Julie Niemat, and Dave Crossan. Kia, I'll turn it over to you to dive into the conversation.
Thank you, Parthivi, and thank you to all of you for being here with us today to have this important conversation and to have it up close and personal with some of the best in our industry. So we're just going to dive right in. And again, as Parthivi said, if you have questions for us, please remember to drop those in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So my first question, when we think about all that is happening in our space is HR practitioners and leaders. I'm going to start with Ravina first. Ravina, we are always on the hunt for great talent to support our businesses. So as you think about the changing technology landscape, different advancements, what are some of the strategies HR teams should be considering to acquire the best talent for their teams?
You know, Kia, I'll talk about what A&E is looking at because our business needs may be different from others, but we are still 100% flexible. So some of us are home, some of us are coming into the office. It's choice. It's all about choice. And so we fully embraced technology to help us feel closer together when we have such a dispersed workforce. So, for example, one of the things that we're contemplating for this summer is having a career day where we have potentially seniors in high school all the way up through potentially sophomores in college come and learn about media. One of the issues that we face, and I'm sure A&E is not alone in this, is that early career people don't understand enough about the industry to make decisions about whether they want to dive into media, entertainment, I'll even throw sports in there, or if they want to go in a different direction. And so we're trying to figure out, in addition to things like an intern program, let's say, in this current environment, how can we leverage technology to meet a broader scope of students and introduce them to media? So it's just one of the strategies that we're employing. I throw it out to my colleagues to see if they have other ideas too.
That is great. I mean, so I heard you talk about not just learning and bringing opportunities to students, internships, but also thinking about the value proposition with continuing to support flexible work and things of that nature. So Dave, let me ask you, how are you and your team having to reimagine approaches to sourcing talent and upskilling current employees?
Thanks, Kia, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the call. Just quickly to react to Ravina's idea, I think that's an interesting one, and I like the thought of going a little earlier on, even into the high school level around education, because what we're finding, and I know everyone else is, and by the way, the business I'm most closely involved with here at NBCU is our local broadcasting group, so TV stations around the country. We're experiencing a little bit of a migration of talent, not only from within our industry. So, for example, people may be leaving the local news environment and going and working in a PR firm or that kind of thing. So we're anxious to sell our industry as a whole. So maybe there's an idea there about even collaborating on something like that.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, I'll call you. So beyond that, when I think about technology and talent, which I think is at the heart of this question, I think of sort of 2 or 3 categories of ideas, some of which I'd say we at NBCU are embracing and, you know, have some best practice around, some where it's aspirational. The first category would be sort of the efficiency plays, which I think everyone's familiar with, around using, you know, technology, specifically AI, to the extent we know what that is, for resume screening, matching candidates with profiles in an intelligent way. And I, you know, speaking to our talent acquisition leader ahead of this call, just to get some of her thoughts, and she shared that even beyond what we're doing ourselves and with our core providers like LinkedIn, for example, there are some specialist companies out there that take an even deeper dive at this employee matching, candidate matching process. HiredScore and Eightfold are the 2 companies that she shared with me. I'm not familiar with either of them, but it might be worth looking up if you're interested in that from a talent acquisition standpoint. So that's the efficiency plays that just help us do more with less in recruiting. Then for me, there's a whole other category around quality. And I do think there's technology solutions around improving the quality of and the effectiveness of job descriptions. Sounds like fairly mundane, but we all, I think, know it's a really important step in marketing a position and feeding into that AI. If you have your job description written really well and tight, you have more chance of being matched up with the right sort of candidates. So I think that's an area there where we're putting in some work, and it will be very useful. And then there's just the curation of the database of candidates. We get nearly 1 million applications to NBC Universal a year, apparently, which I was a little blown away by. But when you think of the scale of our company, it's probably not that surprising. So what do you do with all those people, and how do you, you know, organize them in your, you know, in your database so that they can become, you know, pipeline candidates for positions in the future? So we're doing a lot of work in that area. And then the third thing, just want to think about technology and talent, and this goes all the way back to Ravina's introduction, where she shared that A&E are a fully flexible organization. And just interestingly, when we were, you know, 2 or 3 years ago in the throes of COVID and post-COVID, when we as a C2HR board and all my colleagues on this call were part of this, had regular discussions, hey, what are you guys doing? And Ravina was always a very bold outlier with A&E's plans to be flexible. And I'm, you know, pleased to hear that it's working for them and it's helping them. And what it made me think about is that, you know, as a company that did not go that route, and we've, for the most part, returned to the office, albeit with some hybrid roles within our company, it still does allow you to because technology has allowed you to have a more flexible workplace, it massively widens the pool of candidates available for a certain job. And I think, especially if you're a company that can be fully flexible, that's a really competitive advantage when you're trying to acquire talent. And we try it to the extent we can, even though, you know, we know we need people near our hub offices, that we can at least offer some more flexibility than we could in 2019.
It's a good
Thank
point, Dave. We oh, sorry, Kia.
No, go right ahead.
We have been able to recruit in more geographies now and meet a different pool of candidates than our typical labor force as a result of having our flexible policies. And it's working for us. It's working for us. So
and similarly, we've only been able to do that on a fairly limited basis. So it's interesting to see how that'll play out in the long run.
Yes, we are all watching, Ravina. So if you've been in our space or any space for the last 24 months, no 2 letters have been spoken more than AI. As a matter of fact, we were only about 7 minutes into our conversation today before it came up. And so we all know there is so much happening here. And so, Julie, how can HR, or any talent team for that matter, harness the potential of generative AI?
Well, we have to remember that ChatGPT was really released into the public just a small time ago, as you mentioned. It's less than 24 months. It's a baby, right? That's both a good thing, but it's also the challenge. No one's too late here. But also, as you may have noticed, the amount of Gen AI, brand new companies, tools, and services are popping up everywhere, and they're amazing. I actually need them all. I have to apologize to my tech team if anyone's on the call about all my notes about what I need. But you probably get asked a lot of questions, right? Specifically about how AI can transform HR. So I have 3 ideas. The most obvious, though, is content creation. Dave mentioned it, right? Writing great job descriptions, but also policies, communications. You can write an M&A playbook in seconds. All of this, though, I just have to stress, this is drafting, right? This isn't a final product. It's getting better for sure, but you still need to edit for accuracy, tone, inclusive language, and make sure it actually says what you want it to. What we're seeing a lot now is people learning how to really write a great prompt. But it's important that you try it, right? If you're going to do a job description for a recruiter, you want to, add tech recruiter who maybe understands, these applications, et cetera, or, has worked in this type of ATS. You'll get something more specific than recruiter, right? Media company, you can add. So that's a big one. And that's where a lot of people are experimenting with generative AI. It's in the content creation space, making stuff up, doing research as well. So for our HR kind of tech-enabled workflows, though, I think the biggest opportunity for all of us is to lean into our technology partners. So, and watch this space. And when I say technology partners, I'm meaning like the enabling tech, right? The like our HCM platforms like Workday and SuccessFactors, applicant tracking systems, learning platforms, et cetera. All of these companies are actively building AI innovations across their tools. Some are releasing, nothing too exciting, I will say, but there's stuff that they're working on. They're going to be able to scale a lot better, and they're going to make sure their stuff is compliant-ish, right? We don't deal with that, but their stuff's going to be game-changing. It's going to change how we look at talent management, performance, pay equity, everything. And that's coming up pretty fast. But I think the third and my favorite opportunity for us is driving organizational change. So transforming how work gets done in like a big macro way. Like generative AI is the biggest thing since the World Wide Web, right? We haven't seen anything that can impact how productivity happens, how work is done, how time is hacked. Nothing like it. And this is such a big opportunity for HR, kind of leading the rollout of training across the tools, how we use them, how this changes how we work. So example being like Copilot by Microsoft, right? This integrates across email and Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and even the search engine Bing. And this is, it can be looked at as a novelty for people who aren't really trained, and it could just be distracting. But it's a massive productivity enabler, right? For those who know how to use it. And it's changing rapidly as we go along. So I met with one of the people at Microsoft to talk about how it works across Excel. And, there was a bit of a fail, and he's like, well, this will happen soon. So across Excel, it works really on a one page of data, but when you try to cross-reference, it gets a little wild, or it doesn't work, right? And so why I say HR would be a prime to lead organizational change here. We're experts in learning. We're experts in change management. We have access to the whole org. So partnering with IT to develop learning programs, and ensuring everyone knows how to work within our policies, right? There's going to be a whole lot of policies that are rolled out and changed, as our governments and, cities and stuff change their laws or their plans. And it's important for all of this to land well. People are going to be worried they're not technical enough, or they're too late, or they're intimidated. So we need to be mindful of different learning styles, team requirements, et cetera. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And then whilst all this is happening, we have to really give a nod to culture. So we need to really work to build a culture of learning, experimentation, and agility, right? One of the biggest obstacles to any digital success is being averse to risk, right? So if we foster this culture of adaptability and trust, integrity, learning, all of that, and willingness to change, it'll help us really excel in this space, because it's not going to be perfect. We're not going to get it all right. And by the way, as soon as we learn something, it's going to be different, better. Who knows?
Thank you, Julie, so much for that. Depending on, who you talk to, vantage points are so different. Like in some conversations, it's, yes, we're going to be supercharged, super powered, turbo boosted by AI, productivity off the charts. In other conversations, it's, I'm really fearful about this. I don't know about the fairness of some of this. I don't know about security for the work that I do. And so I love that you talk about experimentation. We do have to think about culture as we continue to progress in this space and harness AI. I'm curious from anybody else, any other implications or challenges as we think about how to be more expansive with AI across our profession?
I mean, I'll chime in. Julie had a great list there, and I got a lot of it resonated with my perspective. Just one thing that we've done, and just to bring it back to HR professionals for a minute, and this may seem a little obvious, but I think it was last week across NBCU's HR organization, which is a big group of people, several hundred people. There was a learning, about AI. What does AI mean for HR? Led by a leader from our technology group, and it was really well attended. It was very much aimed at what does this mean for you in your day to day. And I've had several conversations since then with colleagues who it inspired some thinking about small ways that our jobs can use HR, as Julie mentioned, drafting the first draft of a new policy or a deck or something like that. So I think much as it's revolutionizing the world, and I agree with that point, that on a micro level, everybody could take advantage of it, and it's just having someone to help you jump in the pool and not be fearful of trying it out is a good thing.
It's the one technology that's been released that everyone has access to. There's no barrier there. And it really, it creates a really interesting and amazing sort of access for all. I don't know, it's good and bad, obviously. But again, that's never happened before. And, day one, the amount of people who signed on to that, like, that's unreal. Like, it was, I think, 100,000 within a couple minutes or something.
Yeah, that said, my guess is that half the people on this call have not actually tried to use it in any meaningful way. And maybe it's just a good thing, just practice on something, to just to have the experience of using a tool like that.
Yeah, Dave, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think users are in sort of varying places of adoption, whether you're an early adopter or you're a laggard. I think it's incumbent upon us to educate and pull people along. That's sort of the space that we're at in A&E. We're in the education space. We're doing some piloting with it so that people can start to get comfortable, identify the use case, possible pitfalls, avoid those. So hopefully in a year from now, when we have this call again, we've made some progress.
As long as it's us on the call and not some bots who are.
I'm with you, Dave.
Touche.
I am a real person today, I promise.
No, so thank you guys so much for sharing that. And I just, call to action, love giving homework. So if you are on this call today, like Julie said, there's access to this. And, as Dave referenced, we probably have people in our profession that just hasn't taken that step to at least become an adopter of this. So your one call to action is just go out there and type in a prompt and see what you get back. In all full transparency, I'm working on my prompt game as we speak. So I encourage, that is the call to action for our community.
One caveat, just remember, whatever you put in there becomes public domain.
Yes.
So do not put in anything private.
Yes.
I think Kia might have written the questions of this whole panel today over ChatGPT. I'm kind of wondering.
Julie, maybe 1 or 2. All right, thank you all for that. So switching gears slightly, so employee experience is still a major opportunity for us. It's something that we all talk about, how we differentiate our companies from others. So Dave, I'm going to start with you. In your opinion, what is the most significant emerging trend in this space that just takes off or becomes exponentially important in the next couple of years?
It's difficult to pinpoint and whether you'd call this emerging or maybe it's already emerged, but the word that came to mind for me when I thought about this question, and I again chatted with some people recently just to get some perspective, and we sort of centered on this one word, which is connection. And by connection, it can mean a number of different things, primarily the connection between employees and the organization, and or employees and their manager. And I think the reason it's trending in my mind and very relevant now more than ever, because you could always argue that that's a sort of a basic need we all have, is twofold. One is, we're in this, and we've even discussed it on this call, we're in this flexibility conundrum, or call it what you will, where, we have provided either, by design or accident, a lot more flexibility for our employees in the last few years, some more than others, Ravina, in terms of presence, right? So I think, and that's been generally very well received. And look, I'll acknowledge, and I want to, always give a shout out to the many people we have, at least in our company, who don't really have that flexibility, because we call them on-air or on-site employees who are involved in production, for example. But, there's still a big number of people who have taken advantage of some flexibility. And that's great, but of course it comes potentially at a cost of personal connection with your manager, with your colleagues, with the culture of the organization. And because, in some of it is basic, you're around people a little bit less in person, those water cooler conversations and all that go with that. So I think you have to be very deliberate as an organization. And the more flexible you are, and I'm looking at Ravina there, I'm sure the more deliberate they need to be and have been in creating opportunities for people to connect. And so I think that's a big trend that is continuing, even for the organizations that have returned or mostly returned. We're still feeling it. And I think there's an even stronger need than ever for connection. So my ultra anecdotal measurement for this here at 30 Rock and NBCU is the cafeteria on the 9th floor, where I was 40 minutes ago grabbing my burrito. And I noticed this morning when I walked through, they've actually set some more tables, and the tables are encroaching on the corridor now in the seating area, which is a big area. And I made a little mental note. I said, oh, that's, and then of course I went and got my lunch just now and looked across, and every seat was full. So by my, measurement, that means people, when they do come to the office on a Wednesday, that's a big day for us in person. People want to be with other people. And I would, previously the cafeteria was half full and people would go and eat at the desk and what have you. So I do think that there's a desire for connection, and I think it's a trend that will keep going. The other challenge with respect to connection is that bit about connecting with your manager, that very unique relationship, employee and manager. And I think we've put a lot of stress on that not my company, but we as an industry, we as employers in general, by just frankly asking more of managers. We seek productivity, organization structures get leaner, and the more a manager has to do on a day-to-day basis, the less opportunity they have to focus and prioritize connection. So I think that's something to be mindful of, be deliberate about, making sure managers are trained to and willing to invest time and effort in providing those connections. So that's the sort of the trend. I'd love to hear from the others a little bit on this. I got a thought as well about some examples of what we've done in NBCU to help that.
Sure, Dave, I'd like to maybe chime in here on how it works at A&E. And you're 100% right. There is the need for connection. We are more creative when we're touching and feeling and connecting with each other. We have heard loud and clear from our employees that they wanna connect in their way. And so we have made it very, very clear that we will continue to enjoy the flexibility that we enjoy as long as we're having good results. So the numbers have to work. And we're committed to our convening moments. So at the start of every year, we go around by division and we determine which dates specifically we're going to convene as a people. And some divisions, as you might imagine, are really, really big to say, let's get people together. You'd need like Central Park. So in that regard, maybe you do it by department. And we do have some areas of our business that break it up that way. For example, our creatives have creative days, and that's a cross-departmental thing. But the point is, we're convening with purpose. We are choosing purposeful moments to get together. So just as an example, a little closer to home, as a people team, we convene 4 times a year. We see each other more frequently than that, but we convene on purpose 4 times a year. And it's a combination of development, external speakers, internal speakers. We try to give back to ourselves in the form of some sort of training. And we rotate who's responsible for the meeting, but that's what works for us. And in addition to our convening days, we have collaboration days, which are the days by division or department where we've said, hey, if you want to come in, you're more likely to see other people from your department in the office on a Wednesday, because that's our collaboration day. And we publish those so that if you want to spend some time with someone in finance, you're more likely to find people in finance on Thursdays because that's their day. And that seems to be working for us too. So it's that piece of it is informal and self-directed. And I think our workforce is embracing that, but it is all in the spirit of that connection that you're talking about. It's really important. Some people have a greater need to be seen and heard than others. And I think some of that varies depending on where you are in your career too. And so that seems to be working for us so far.
Good. I'm curious, does anybody sort of like crack the nut on what does really good employee experience look like, and what kind of measures are you linking to it? I mean, I know several of us probably use some of your traditional mechanisms like employee opinion, sentiment, and things like that, or maybe even turnover. But I'm curious if there are any other ways, whether it's data center or just sort of even qualitative. Like Dave mentioned that you really are helping our business understand the impact of effective employee experience. So I'm curious if anybody's sort of got some good nuggets for our community about that.
I wish I had a better answer, because I mean, we do good engagement surveying at NBCU. It's a pretty sophisticated process, and it has an opportunity to pulse in more frequent ways, which different businesses use. So I think that is the go-to or the most sort of reliable way of assessing the impact of what you're doing on employee experience. In terms of the employee experience, you think about the traditional life cycle, starting with onboarding all the way to offboarding. I think we've done some good work on both onboarding and offboarding as processes, but we've struggled, frankly, with measuring it, particularly at the offboarding. I think it's a very untapped resource, is the data that you could, in theory, glean from people who are leaving the company, often because they don't want to talk to you at that time, or there's no motivation for them to do that. So we've tried we do traditional exit stuff, but we've tried a post-termination sort of exit survey that's not gotten a ton of traction across the board. So I think that this is an area as an industry or as a profession in HR where there could be a breakthrough. Maybe AI is the opportunity to do that. A breakthrough product or technology that more reliably measures the employee experience.
Dave, we just launched an offboarding survey, and the response rate is unreal. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And the intel is really good too. I mean, I think what's interesting about experience is not everyone wants the same thing. Somebody really wants more work friends. Someone wants to get developed. The
Yeah.
main reason everyone leaves mostly is for more money, right? And more experience. Like there was no shockers in there. And not that I'm gonna tell you guys all my survey result data here. I'm happy to show you what it looks like though. But a big part of it too is how we engage and get people to open that link, right?
Yeah.
And just I'm a big fan of marketing, right? And if people don't see and use our stuff or even know we have it, a little bit of a miss. So we're always experimenting with what's going to get them to open this thing and share their thoughts.
Yeah, be interested. We haven't had the as high a response rate. I don't.
Yeah, I'll share with you what we had. Ours is actually really a new process, but again, like the outputs of it, it's really different in terms of what people experience while at their company, right? And what they would like more of, what they actually love while they're here. But that's also valuable. So we know what we want to continue to invest in and stuff we might want to probe a lot more with employees to find out, is this really something you want or not?
Dave, I'll add, I think for us, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, I think, there's a question around DEI, but one of the things that has seemed to create stickiness for us, is our ERGs. Like, we really have been leaning into our employee resource groups. And they have been able, through those experiences, to shape what their experience is at A&E. And our resource groups run the gamut. Prime timers, working moms, Mazel, Bay, like, Familia, like we have a resource group for everybody. And it has been very instrumental to bringing insights to our exec team so that we can continue to shape the experience people have while they're here. I mean, when you think about the heart of our business, we're in the storytelling business. So we need our people to be along in that journey with us. And so we listen. We don't always adopt everything, but we listen.
We listen.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually. I have ERGs on my little cheat sheet here to mention, because I do think they've been great. Excuse the pun, resources for us as an alternate way of engaging employees. And the thing I like about them, as well as all the obvious stuff, is that at least at NBCU, they're run by your peers. It doesn't feel like it's a big corporate kind of effort.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
All right, well, thank you guys for sharing all of those ideas, and listen to all of our participants here today. We are a learning community. And so all the HR innovators out there, if you have an idea, drop it in the comments on our post about this series. All right, let's go to one of my favorite subjects these days, overall well-being and wellness. So I'm going to start with Julie. Julie, how can our HR teams support employee well-being and overall health in the workplace?
Well, so what's really interesting to me about well-being is it's truly, there's no true one size fits all, right? It's all different. So thinking about like what drives stress and anxiety, or even sickness, right, may not be the same for everyone. So we have for example, a team's impacted by the same stressful event. Let's say it's quarantine, COVID, or whatever, right? And people are going to respond to that in really different ways. For some, it's going to be the literal worst things happen to them in their life. They're missing, key milestone events, whatever's happening, it's the worst. Others, it's inconvenient. It sucks pretty bad, but not the worst, whatever. And then others, it's kind of the most amazing thing ever. We don't have to see humans in person, and it was great. And by the way, all of them are 100% right. For each of them, their reaction is 100% right. But when we think across the company, like how do we support our workers when their needs are all completely different? That's where it gets really tricky, right? We can't just push something out and think it's going to work. So we do need to, first of all, I know a lot of our companies have a lot of really thoughtful, robust, cool programs, but not everyone knows about them. Because you know about them maybe when you see the thing, but when you need it, you're like, hey, where's the thing? So I think it's important. I mentioned marketing earlier, but to perpetually market your wellness stuff, right? And it could be through events and campaigns like, hey, I don't know, February is going to be financial wellness month or something, right? And then show the tools, et cetera, get people engaged in it, and in different ways, not just, in-person learning classes, but, we've all seen the impact that sometimes podcasts have versus opt-in webinar or a recorded event. Like all of that kind of hits different, and different people, need different things in different ways. And also just thinking about the spectrum of wellness. It's not yoga and, medical support all the time. It includes, as I mentioned, financial, but family, social, all of that. And again, people need different things at different times, sometimes different days. And that's a challenge. It's also a great opportunity for us. So we mentioned surveys earlier. We just asking folks, what hits, what works, what do they need, what do they long for, kind of thing. It's important. And you will see, right? People will want different things. And I'm always paying attention to the smaller voices in there. There may not be a big population asking for something, but I want to know what is it? Because it could be looking at a group that may not be well represented, but they have this need. And by the way, a lot of it, we do have programs to support, they're just not aware. So then getting into those groups to make sure that we're marketing well is good. But one of the things that I find really important, like we need to know as a HR world, like we need to know what's there, what's out there, what's new. But having really, really great partners in the well-being space is really important, right? So I'm thinking about partners who can provide us relevant solutions that are really meeting the needs of their broader client groups, not just your company. One example is like EAPs. So if anyone's looked at utilization of the EAP, they're really, really low. They provide a whole bunch of stuff when somebody's in crisis generally or have a specific need, but they still have a really low usage rate. So one thing we did at Warner Brothers Discovery is we replaced our EAP with more of a narrow version of it. It's called Lyra, but they've got extraordinary access to mental health services and therapists. And our utilization is really high. We don't have all of these tiny little support moments that were hardly ever used, but we do have a service that really hits and reaches folks who don't necessarily have easy access to a therapist, or not sure if they need one. It's been incredible in terms of the usage. Also, we have a product rollout, and I know on C2HR, you probably met them a few times, a company called Grokr. So they're an online wellness app, and they provide like video-based physical, mental, financial, you name it, wellness solutions. They even have like nutritionists and recipes and stuff. And so solutions like that cover a lot of ground. But certainly they don't cover everything. One other thing I think about with wellness that, a lot of people don't really jump to is incorporating different ways of spending our time. So I'm going to call it ways of work. They don't have a good name for this yet. I'll get it. So like, if you think about, it's not always just in the programs we deliver and push out to solution something, but being mindful about how we're spending our time together, right? Time, to me, is one of our most valuable resources. And what are we doing on Zoom meetings literally all day? And I think some of those meetings have to be emails, right? So being respectful of like time zones, times of day, and better defining kind of what we're doing, how we communicate, email, Slack, IM, Zoom, text, all of those things literally are probably happening to me right now. And people trying to get in touch with me. What if we're only using one or two? And that's something that I think it's not necessarily a company declares how work is done, what our kind of working norms are. I think that really happens in the team, right? So if it's the company giving solutions, the individual advocating for themselves, the team is the one who's making sure like, hey, yeah, let's not do, a 9 p.m. London time call. Let's, we've got 3 people there, et cetera, whatever. We don't want, one time a late meeting may not be terrible, but when it happens all the time, it has kind of a ripple effect many times into people's lives, families, whatever. And honestly, I think you can see an enormous improvement in just how people feel about work with just a few small tweaks. So that's my weird one. I talk about ways to work with my team all the time because honestly, like how we spend time together is really important. And if I had a colleague the other day tell me he asked somebody, when she was free, she's like, oh, I'm on Zooms all day. And like literally, she's like, morning to night, it's all Zooms. And he's like, when do you get your work done? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh no, my job is Zoom, and that's what our world is coming to. So and so when is work getting done? In the margins, I don't know, but it probably doesn't feel great to that person. In steps AI, that's going to change some things, but not all the things, right?
Julie, I think that's a good idea, and it's a nice timely reminder. I don't know about you guys, but we're going through our performance, review process right now, and I think it, as I talk to managers and colleagues, I think that might suggest adding that question to the anything else we can discuss today kind of piece of it, which is how is the way we work together, me and you or our team, is it working for you? Because you're right, it's very easy as a leader to impose your own way of working on your team when it's actually not necessary. If you really step back, you know, you could have a little bit more flexibility as a team to let people sync up the way they like to operate.
I love that.
Just from just to piggyback on the, you know, the well-being question, and Julie, I mean, feel very much the same way. We have a great suite of benefits as a company, whether it's, you know, all the traditional sort of apps. I'm glad you mentioned financial well-being. That's something that we as a company have, I think, ramped up a bit in the last year, both in terms of education and partnering with providers who can support employees, and even into, you know, we have a pretty robust internal process of grants available for people in hardship situations that unfortunately does get some take up, you know, as natural disasters and everything else can occur. The one area that I thought I'd mention here, knowing we have an audience of HR leaders on the line, is just making sure that we're really buttoned up with our accommodation processes. When employees are coming to us asking for an accommodation, you know, I think sometimes your first reaction is to roll your eyes, as it's an administrative hurdle and, you know, and all that stuff. But I do think we shouldn't ignore the fact that it takes a lot for an employee to pluck up the courage to come to their manager or their HR person and say, hey, I need something. I need to be accommodated. And sometimes it's a medical thing that's fairly straightforward. But I want to make sure that we as a profession are taking those requests seriously, you know, and honoring the processes and that we have to review and address and find ways to creatively accommodate people's needs. Because, you know, we all know that we're in a world now where there are just more challenges, whether it's through the mental health crisis, through to family needs and everything in between.
You know, Dave, I just want to piggyback off of something you said, because I think it's really important also to level set with your managers and employees on their definition of wellness. You know, we introduced wellness days maybe 2 or 3 years ago in lieu of your traditional sick days. And there are some leaders that still struggle with the fact that, like, if I don't see Kia sneezing and with a red nose and a hoarse throat, why is she not coming to, you know, virtual work every day? And we've been telling people, you should take those days to promote whatever wellness means to you. And so I think we live in a world and people talk freely about, you know, sort of, I need a mental health day, whatever that is, or I'm going to go run this marathon on a Friday because that makes me feel better. We should be supporting people in that endeavor, using their time that they're entitled to take however they like, without defining it according to your definition. It's a conversation that's worthy having.
I'm so glad you said that, Ravina. And, you know, all of you at this point have talked about the importance of the role of the leader. And so I'm going to come to you next with this question about how we develop our leaders. So what are some of those top leadership skills, competencies needed now to address all of the things happening, shaping our industry outside some of those forces, but also what we see happening? So talk to us a little bit about how you see our roles and what are some of those skills we should be helping our leaders develop.
Sure. That was a smooth transition, Kia. You know, it's interesting, in all seriousness, in 2020, when we were all on lockdown, one of the things that was on our list of goals for A&E was to come up with a revised list of leadership competencies, because we felt like ours were a little stale, we needed new life, and we were going to leverage them to create our career planning. And so we went on a roadshow and spoke to everybody in the exec team and asked them, when you think forward 5, 10 years from now to meet the challenge in this changing environment, the media landscape is like spiraling in different directions. What kind of skills are you looking for the future? And they said things like, I need someone who's got change agility, someone who's nimble, someone who can be accountable and courageous, trying to think, strategic thinkers, results driven, client and customer focused, because they can mean two different things, external clients, internal customers, vice versa. People who are good at collaboration, and then probably chief among all of those things, innovators. We need innovators. Things are changing. And so at A&E, those are our leadership competencies. And we developed maybe a year and a half after that, something called Leadership Academy, which is an 8-day immersive course. And we do unconscious bias training. We do insights discovery, if any of you have ever used that tool. We go through manager training. It's very, very in-depth, but we promote things that are important to us, like radical candor. Julie said it earlier in this conversation, but one of the most important things that we preserve and cherish at A&E is our culture. And so we spend a lot of time talking to our leaders in Leadership Academy about what culture means to us. And it is not at A&E something that HR owns. Everybody owns our culture. It is a shared responsibility. And we win a lot of awards, and it's great. We're all very proud of it. But we realize the value of coming to work every day and having a smile on our faces and not having Sunday blues. And I think all of that is attributed to the environment that our leaders set.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on leadership capabilities needed for the future?
I love Ravina's list. That's so good.
A great list.
I mean, I don't see how we can be successful without those, right? And creating a culture where you can take a swing and a miss could happen, and that's okay, because I always see that as the idea ahead of its time, right? If we are in love with something and believe in it and execute it and it doesn't work, guess what? It just, we're in this business of entertainment. It doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Can't read everyone's minds. We're no Nostradamus. I know we're supposed to be on this here call predicting the future, but there's something really important about that. That's hard, right? Nobody wants their thing not to work. But if we look at it and like, hey, we got behind it. We all, we greenlit this thing. It didn't work. So what was it? Did we launch on the wrong day?
Yeah.
Right? Did we just market it bad? We could have done that, or market wrong, different, whatever. But then, then when something doesn't hit in the future, people won't feel all forlorn, like I can't believe. And then they start building more courage, take more risks, change the world.
Yeah, we're all about fail fast. It's okay. Fail fast, and pivot. Try something else.
Oh, when you say, when you say pivot, it makes me think of Friends. So.
But it's interesting because we have our Talent Lab, which is our primary sort of leadership development organization that works across all the NBCU divisions. They do a really nice job, actually, Julie, of marketing the programs that they do, and all the core leadership development growth series of of interventions are called things like START, which is the the initial thing, and you've got programs called Drive and Lead, and then Pivot is actually the name of one of our programs aimed at middle management, and the concept being you've managed one team, now you become a manager of managers. That sort of is the broad criteria for going to the Pivot program, and it is a pivot that you have to make in your career when you're suddenly not only responsible for those people that you can see around you. There's another layer, and that is a whole different level of competence required. So that's what we do. I just also wanted to concur with Ravina's list, which I thought were right on point, very similar in some ways to NBCU's sort of leadership competencies. I think I would just add, in the spirit of this, what we've been talking about, this conversation, and these might be a little bit more perfunctory, but data analysis skills and ability to, at a basic level, understand and use AI models, I'd probably throw onto the list for most leaders now, because it's going to become a table stakes for leaders with the ubiquity of these data tools and AI. It pervades every conversation we have, as we've shown today.
Very good. All right, well, I'm going to kick our last question to Ravina. And then again, if you're out there, you have questions, we've reserved a few minutes to answer some questions. And so our final question, I'll kick it to Ravina and allow everyone else to chime in where you see fit. So Ravina, a lot's happening in the landscape with diversity, equity, and inclusion. How may HR teams think about navigating this space going forward?
Fearlessly. I mean, I think we've come a long way because we're not shying away from the conversations. And I said it earlier today, but one of the best things we do as an organization is listen. We create the forums for people to express themselves. And look, you have to toe a fine line. Sometimes our employees want A&E to declare a side or an opinion, which of course we don't do. But we give people the forums to express themselves. And I think one of the ways companies can do that is to really lean into their ERGs, and belonging is such an important element of DEI. I was just having this conversation last week with an executive, and we were debating the difference between inclusion and belonging. And I said, Bob, I'm gonna make his name up for purposes of anonymity. I said, Bob, inclusion is making the table longer and saying, Kia, you can sit at it now. Belonging is, hey, Kia, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that topic. We've gone around the table. You've been silent. What's on your mind? That's belonging. That's creating the stickiness. That's helping people feel like they should be there. And I feel like that's our agenda for 2024. We've moved the needle a lot on our DEI efforts. We've got a long way to go. But we're very focused on the belonging, the stickiness, the things that keep people engaged, keep people happy at work, recognize and respect each other's differences. So hopefully that helps.
That was wonderful. Thank you. All right. Well, I do want to make sure we leave time. And we got a couple of questions in here. So I'll start with the first one we got. As we have been talking about employee experience, how do you balance all the different expectations among generations in our workforce?
I mean, I can chime in because I was want to talk a little bit about how the flexibility conundrum is affecting the employee experience, because I do think that we going into the return to the office phase, we all had these very wise predictions that, hey, millennials are going to love it because they hate coming to work, and all these assumptions that have been debunked as along the way. I do think that one of the things that we anticipated has played out, which is early career. So this isn't a generational comment, although it proxies to it. Early career employees do need, as we always have done as early career, do need touch points and do need to be in the meetings or in the virtual meetings, exposed to opportunities to learn about the business. So I think, and this isn't a function necessarily of being in the office or out of the office, but making sure that you're very purposeful and deliberate, as Ravina mentioned, in creating opportunities for people who are early in their career to get to sit in on a meeting or get exposed to something that isn't in their current scope of job, but will stand them in good stead going forward. So I think that that's something that we've spent quite a lot of time with an NBCU. I don't think we've done as much thinking about other generations and their needs with respect to the employee experience. We do a pretty good job of helping people plan for retirement and what have you, so that's something that I think, companies understandably are investing a lot in because of the aging sort of, demographics in our workforce. But I'd be interested to hear what, if there's any other best practices out there.
I know from my perspective, Dave, I know we all do employee surveys, but even looking at feedback by the generation, like you can look at it that way. It's so fascinating, right? And we
Yeah.
see, for some of the little survey questions, we will see a big kind of chasm between how people feel and what they need and want. Also a big chasm, a big unknown. I see sometimes with some questions, people are like, I don't know what that is. That means we have to write better survey questions sometimes, I think. Or we have to communicate better, right? That happens a lot too. But it is really fascinating. And then, and what a rich, piece of data for us to then to react to and make sure we have what we have is appropriate, and people, it's resonating with folks, et cetera. But, sometimes it's not even generation. There's so many different, needs and kind of all over the place where people will respond really different to what we're serving them. And then new needs pop up every day, so.
All right, and this last question, because we only have a few minutes, and you actually put your name here, so one of us can follow up with you, but I'll give you a quick answer. So No says, hey, love your ideas. How would you recommend a senior talent partner pitch a similar idea in a Fortune 100 company? I feel like most of my ideas, all are proven to work, tend to fall on deaf ears when tenured leaders who often lack understanding of the modern workforce. And so I will just say to you, what I've seen work successfully, especially if you're in a culture that's a bit more conservative, is ask for the experiment. Ask to pilot, ask for a trial, just to test proof of concept. And then as you build your wins, you go and ask for more to scale what it is you're trying to do. But happy to provide additional responses to you. And thank you for identifying yourself. So I want to first thank our wonderful board members for sharing their expertise with all of us today. So many great nuggets around employee experience, how we keep our people well, how we think about leaders of the future, what's needed for our workspaces to grow our talent, grow our businesses. Heard a lot of great insights today. We wish you all well. Hope you all have some meaningful takeaways that you can go and apply with your teams in your workspaces. Thank you so much for being a part of our C2 HR community, and we look forward to seeing you and connecting with you at future events. Thank you.
Thanks, Kia. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kia. Thanks, team.
Thanks, everybody.